Did you know that the Titanic, hailed as the unsinkable ship, sank on its very first voyage, taking down over 1,500 lives with it, and that some of its most haunting secrets are still being uncovered more than a century later? In the early hours of April 15th, 1912, the mighty RMS Titanic, the largest, most luxurious, and most ambitious ship of its time, vanished beneath the icy waters of the North Atlantic. For more than a century, the tragedy of the Titanic has captivated the human imagination. It has been retold in books, films, and documentaries, but beyond the romanticized stories and iconic images lies a history filled with mystery, overlooked details, and secrets that still haunt the world today. This is not just the story of a shipwreck, it is the story of human ambition, pride, survival, and the terrifying consequences of underestimating nature. This is Quest Revealers, and today we uncover the secrets of the world's most famous shipwreck. The Titanic was more than just a ship, it was a floating city. At nearly 882 feet in length, with lavish dining rooms, ornate staircases, swimming pools, and even a gymnasium, it represented the height of human engineering and luxury in the early 20th century. It was the pride of the White Star Line, built to dominate the transatlantic travel industry and to show the world that human innovation had no limits. The ship was hailed as unsinkable, a claim repeated so often in newspapers, advertisements, and conversations that people came to believe it as an undeniable truth. Yet this bold declaration would come back to haunt those who stepped aboard. On April 10, 1912, Titanic departed Southampton, England, on her maiden voyage to New York City. Among her passengers were some of the wealthiest and most influential figures of the time, American millionaires John Jacob Astor and Benjamin Guggenheim, British aristocrats, prominent businessmen, as well as hundreds of poor immigrants hoping to start new lives in America. The ship carried around 2,200 people in total, divided sharply by class, the lavishly rich in first class, the comfortable in second, and the hopeful, but believe it as an undeniable truth. Titanic was a reflection of the social divisions of its time, a microcosm of society afloat in the middle of the Atlantic. From the beginning, the voyage was filled with a sense of grandeur and confidence. The passengers marveled at the ship's size and beauty. First-class travelers enjoyed French cuisine, live music, and the elegance of luxury cabins that rivaled five-star hotels. Meanwhile, third-class passengers slept in simpler but still relatively comfortable quarters compared to what many were used to back home. Yet beneath the glamour and the joy, there were cracks, literal and metaphorical, that few noticed. The Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, enough for about half the passengers on board. Regulations at the time required lifeboats only for a fraction of a ship's capacity, but this oversight would soon become one of history's most tragic miscalculations. 4 days into its voyage, on the night of April the 14th, Titanic was steaming across the North Atlantic at nearly full speed. The night was calm, the ocean like glass, the stars shining brilliantly above. It seemed as though nothing could disturb the ship's steady journey. But in the darkness, icebergs floated silently, carried southward from Greenland. Warnings of ice had been received throughout the day from nearby ships, but they were not taken with urgency. The Titanic pressed forward, her captain and officers confident in the ship's strength and eager to keep to schedule. At 11:40 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet spotted a massive iceberg directly in Titanic's path. "Iceberg right ahead!" he shouted. The crew scrambled to turn the wheel, but it was too late. The Titanic struck the iceberg along its starboard side, scraping and tearing through several of its watertight compartments. At first, the impact felt like nothing more than a vibration to many passengers. Some barely noticed. But below deck, water began pouring into the ship at a terrifying rate. The unsinkable Titanic had been mortally wounded. For the first hour after the collision, there was confusion. Some passengers laughed off the incident, others went back to bed, reassured by the crew that everything was under control. But beneath the decks, engineers and officers knew the truth. The Titanic was doomed. The ship could survive flooding in 4 of its watertight compartments, maybe even 5, but 6 were already compromised. Slowly, the bow began to sink lower into the water. Panic was delayed, but it was inevitable. As the crew prepared lifeboats, chaos and disbelief spread. Many passengers refused to board, convinced that staying on the Titanic was safer than venturing into the freezing darkness of the ocean. First-class passengers were ushered into lifeboats first, while many in third class were left confused, locked behind gates, or unable to find their way to the deck. The haunting inequality of that night would be remembered forever. Out of the 200 people on board, only about 700 survived. The sinking reached its most terrifying climax around 2:20 a.m. The ship's stern rose high into the air as the bow plunged beneath the waves. Lights flickered and went out. Screams filled the night. Then, with a thunderous roar, the Titanic broke in two. The bow disappeared into the depths, followed by the stern crashing back down before also vanishing into the freezing Atlantic. In just a matter of hours, the world's grandest ship had become its greatest maritime disaster. But the story did not end there. For decades, the wreck of the Titanic lay undiscovered at the bottom of the ocean. Survivors told their stories, some remembered as heroes, others as cowards. Myths emerged. Tales of men who dressed as women to escape, of musicians who played until the very end, of Captain Smith going down with his ship. Some of these were true, others embellished, but they all contributed to the Titanic's enduring legend. It wasn't until 1985 that the wreck was finally discovered by Robert Ballard and his team, nearly 12,500 feet below the ocean's surface. The images they captured were haunting. The grand staircase buried in silt, rust-covered decks, and the broken hull lying in eternal silence. The Titanic, once a symbol of human achievement, had become a ghostly reminder of our vulnerability. To this day, questions remain. Could more lives have been saved? Why were warnings ignored? What if the ship had slowed down or carried enough lifeboats or taken a different course? These what-ifs continue to fuel fascination, debate, and endless retellings of the tragedy. The Titanic was more than a ship. It was a lesson, one that history has forced us to remember. The Titanic's story endures not only because of its tragedy, but because it represents something deeply human: ambition, hubris, hope, and loss. It is the reminder that no matter how advanced we believe we are, nature holds the final word. More than 110 years later, the Titanic still lies in the cold darkness of the Atlantic, slowly disintegrating, while its memory lives on in every retelling, every discovery, and every haunting question. And so, the Titanic remains not just the story of a shipwreck, but the story of humanity itself, our dreams, our mistakes, and our fragile mortality. If you want more incredible stories that reveal the hidden truths of history, subscribe to Quest Revealers, because this is only the beginning of the mysteries we will uncover together.